I'm James Matthews, and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C. Donald Trump, it would appear, is about to learn his fate. There's no doubting the strength of this hurricane as it roars through. Sky News, get the full story first. Do you fear a fourth indictment?
He's from Sky News. He's entitled to ask me questions.
This is Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview. A first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. But first, our top stories. In an exclusive interview with Sky News, the Prime Minister of Qatar, who helped orchestrate the Israel-Hamas ceasefire agreement, says it's the last chance for Gaza. 32-year-old Callum Parslow, a Nazi-obsessed man who tried to stab an asylum seeker to death, has been jailed for life. And Donald Trump's inauguration on Monday will now take place inside the Capitol Rotunda in Washington because of the severe cold weather that's forecast. Hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines with Daily Mirror columnist Susie Boniface and the political commentator Benedict Spence. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. Great to see you. So let's see what is on some of those front pages now. Well, starting with The Guardian, which reveals exclusively that the government is to scrap half of the 40 new hospitals planned by the previous administration. The Financial Times speaks to Sir Keir Starmer, who believes the government will be able to strike a trade deal with the US that will mean Britain doesn't have to pay the international tariffs that President-elect Donald Trump intends to impose. The Telegraph says Donald Trump is to rule on the future of the Chagos Islands after his team directly intervened in the British government's deal to hand them back to Mauritius. The US has a military base there. While the Times hears that a record number of millionaires have left the UK for tax reasons since Labour came to power last year. The Express leads with a warning from pensioners to Keir Starmer and Kemi Badenoch that neither of them will be forgiven if they go back on their promises to keep the pensions triple lock. No remorse, that's how The Sun describes murderer Jake Farry after he was sent back to jail when the paper exposed him as the rapper who had been glorifying his crime in his own song lyrics. The Mail claims an unusual exclusive with news that the diary of Adolf Hitler's English girlfriend has been discovered after 80 years. The Mirror devotes its front page to tributes to football legend Dennis Law, who has died at the age of 84. And he also dominates the front page in his home country. This is the front of tomorrow's Scotsman. A new headache for Labour is how the Eye describes demands by the train drivers' union ASLEF for a pay increase greater than the one already agreed with the government last year. And finally, The Star says that one of Donald Trump's first acts on returning to the White House will be to give the actor and director Sylvester Stallone the job of bringing back the golden age of Hollywood movies. And we are joined now by Susie Boniface and Benedict Spence. I'm sure that Donald Trump will do a lot of other things on his first day in office. You know, the inauguration is Monday, but already we really sense Donald Trump dominating a lot of the headlines, even in this country. So let's start with the FT and the front page, a story that I mentioned there. Starmer touts Trump relationship. And so in this interview to the FT, Susie, Starmer seems to think that it could all work out with Donald Trump.
Yep, and one of the things that he's talking about here is the dinner that he had with Trump before the election. I think it was September, when Donald Trump made an effort, he says, to meet Keir Starmer when he was in, I think, New York, and host him for dinner. And he made a huge effort in order, because he had to be there, because it was Keir Starmer, because it was the Prime Minister, and he wanted to meet him, and all the rest of it was going to be so important. And so he's putting quite a lot of stock in the fact that Trump, you know, when he's away from the keyboard, he is perhaps slightly different to how he is when he's at the keyboard. But that doesn't, and I'm sure Benedict will point it out, that doesn't take away from the fact that Trump has said there are going to be trade wars with just about everybody. There are going to be tariffs on just about everything that isn't American-made, that, you know, any kind of trade deal with Britain would involve, as it did last time Trump was in office, talk about, you know, genetically modified goodness knows what we'd have to accept over here in American beef and so on, and then bothering with our NHS and everything else. And various other things which you'd have thought would be a red line, really, for Starmer. So he's talking it up and he's being positive, and he's certainly not saying anything bad. This isn't the time to criticise the special relationship. But he doesn't seem to be too worried about Nigel Farage. So I think time will tell, won't it?
Well, we'll find out at least starting Monday anyway. Benedict?
I mean, I think he has to be upbeat. He has to try and portray this as being upbeat, but I don't think he's going to get any special deals. I don't think there is much of a special relationship left, certainly not between the Republican Party and the Labour Party in this country. And I think, actually, the way that Elon Musk has been presenting himself on Twitter and the way that he's been talking about Starmer and other members of the Labour government is symptomatic of that. I think, actually, if there was going to be some sort of special arrangement on the table, he wouldn't have been allowed to continue to tweet in the manner that he has. I think somebody would have given him a tap on the shoulder and says, the big man is not OK with that, but he's doing it, he's going to keep doing it, because that is ultimately the direction of travel that they would like not just the UK, but Europe in general to go, and they see the Labour Party as an obstacle to that. They also haven't forgotten that Labour Party members and operatives went and campaigned for the Harris campaign during the election. They took that very personally. You know, whatever the scale of it was, it doesn't matter. They took it incredibly personally. These are people, Donald Trump in particular, is somebody whose ego doesn't really stand for that sort of thing. So obviously, Keir Starmer has to try and present the optimistic case. I think they are going to twist the UK's arm as much as they can to try to force them away from Europe, for a start, to try to create a wedge there. And because they see the Reform Party in the ascendancy, whatever, you know, the spat might have happened between Musk and Farage there, I think that is what they're going to try and do. They do not view us as equal partners. Increasingly, because we are weakening ourselves economically, they view us as an addendum. They view us as something of a back garden, and they're going to try and make the most of that.
In the States, they never really use the phrase special relationship as much as we use it over here.
Yeah, because it's a
We've been a minor partner since the Second World War, and that's just how it is. And our nuclear weapons and our deterrent and everything else has depended on our economy since the end of the empire has been secondary to America. So that's not particularly new. Of course, what happened last time, we had similar issues with Trump. We had Theresa May in office. We had a weak Prime Minister, who was having problems with Brexit, and we had a very strong, allegedly is known as strong, in the White House. I mean, lots of opinions about what he wanted people to do. And what happened was simply we activated the Queen, which mollified him nicely, right?
Well, the King is going to the inauguration.
A couple of state visits, and he was sweet as a nut. Whether the King can achieve the same, we don't know. I'm sure he will be activated, but I expect that the Princess of Wales will be activated as well.
Benedict, let's look at another issue where Trump is also, I guess, making his weight felt. Front page of the Daily Telegraph, and it's about the future of the Chagos Islands.
Yeah, I mean, well, right here, though, this is a demonstration of, frankly, how little importance the UK actually has, and that it can't necessarily make a decision on its own sovereign territory. In that, actually, we are now having to wait for the incoming US administration to give it the green light. And if we're being completely honest, if they say no, what do we do? You know, what does Keir Starmer do in that situation? He can't necessarily turn around to his biggest ally and go, well, we're going to do it anyway. That'll be hugely embarrassing. You could even have an even more embarrassing situation where the US just goes behind the UK's back and goes straight to the Mauritian government and says, OK, you've managed to get a really, really awful deal out of these people. Congratulations. Now we're going to offer you even money to just buy Diego Garcia ourselves. So the British will be out of hand, out of pocket, and they won't even have any influence in that part of the world. I mean, quite aside from the fact that it's a dreadful deal, a really dreadful deal, doesn't make sense to anybody except Mauritius, it is just simply a sign of how little store the UK is being held in. And actually, if we can't provide military assistance to the US, increasingly you do have to ask, well, what is the point of any kind of relationship? We've allowed our territories to be degraded, our military capacity to be degraded. You know, the City of London as a financial institution is being degraded, partly by Wall Street. There's not a lot else going on here. And then if you have a government that half of which in the UK loathes Donald Trump and loathes Elon Musk, what special favours are they going to do us?
fact is that in the government, the Starmer would argue he had no choice but to do a deal on Chagos because the International Court had ruled it was illegal, and you've got to do something about it in that circumstance. The political thing, which he got wrong here, is that he made a deal and he thought he could rush it through before the new president came through, and that it would have Biden's approval. What he should have done is to have a deal, get Biden's approval, and then say, well, we can't really sign it off until the new president signs it off. Abide by what you have to do internationally, but make it clear that you're going to have to wait for the new president to also sign it off. That would have been politically the right thing to do. Whether Trump liked it or not, then you wouldn't have had the embarrassment of maybe having to change the deal in some way. To shove it through was politically a bad thing.
I know you want to come in on this, but I just want to get a story in the Times. In front page of the Times, more bad news for Labour. Tax plans trigger exodus of millionaires. Benedict, talk us through the story.
I mean... Would you like, in fact, to start on this?
I hate this story.
Go on.
Go on, then you do it.
You seem a lot more...
It's triggered an exodus of non-doms, people who were not paying their tax. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. It's fine. I don't care. It's fine. It's not going to cost us anything, is it? Because
Benedict, is it just bye-bye?
I mean, it is going to cost us something. Not as much as perhaps people would like to imagine it is, but it is going to cost us something. But as much as anything else, it is a demonstration of a lack of confidence in the direction of the government and of the tax system, and also of business in this country, is that actually if the people who aren't necessarily paying all the taxes they should be, but would have the capital to invest in economic opportunities, are going, well, we don't really see those opportunities, so we are going to make the most of this opportunity and leave. That's not a vote of confidence. And, you know, again, this just goes to the general sense of malaise in the UK. I mean, we had this from the Bank of Canada, I think, earlier today, sort of issued a round-robin saying that UK policies towards growth are actively harming it and that it was nihilism. And you kind of think, well, if that's Canada, that's nice, placid Canada, that's not the US. They're saying, guys, what are you doing? I'm not surprised that the millionaires are all off.
Really having a January moment.
I am.
I just think that if, you know, the non-doms, there's an argument about investing in businesses and so on, and building business in this country, and how much they can donate and so on to philanthropic causes, which they talk about in here, and how much they can contribute in housing and all the rest of it. But the presence of people who are here because they don't wish to pay tax and who therefore present a cost of some sort or another to the nation overall, drive up housing prices, drive up the problems that we have with second home ownership in this country, and spend half their time somewhere else and spend all their money somewhere else. We need people who can be attracted to this country and spend their money here and pay their taxes here.
OK, on that note, we're going to take a little break. Coming up, which Hollywood stars only found out they've been given a job they hadn't even applied for when Donald Trump announced it on social media. We'll tell you who in just a moment.
Paris reverberated to the sights, sounds and smells of conflict. There's a focal point to all this anger, and that is Emmanuel Macron. I'm Adam Parsons, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Brussels. There are dozens of people desperately clambering to get onto that boat. It is a chaotic scene, but it's being watched by dozens of French police officers on the beach. I've reported on migration across Europe, close up on the ground, understanding that sense of desperation and meeting the criminal gangs behind it. This old fishing boat set off from the Libyan port of Tobruk. There were 606 people who were on board. So we've been distributing life jackets to all the people on board this boat, and now the first person is coming on board. This is the ugly side of Italian football.
In Italy, everything is really organized.
Football's problems with hooliganism, racism were just dormant, and now they're back and they're getting worse. We cover so many countries, languages and cultures and work hard to gain trust to bring you the full story first. Help is slowly reaching these places. It's not just homes, but whole streets like this one that have been reduced to rubble and dust. This is a picture of destruction. Everywhere you look in this mountaintop community, there is absolute devastation. These are the settlers in waiting, keen to start a new life, to annex Gaza for Israel.
The least we can do is just kick them out of our land.
Gaza, which is just 2 miles in that direction, is under attack again.
Getting the chance to tell people's stories, it's a privilege.
Welcome to the world.
Our new podcast, starting now. It's very exciting. Every week, we'll be reporting from the world's trouble spots.
We get to hold those in positions of power accountable, and we get to ask the questions that the audience, the listeners, want to know about.
And that's why it is so important that people tune in, come along for the road, come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Welcome back. You're watching the press preview, and I'm here with Susie and Benedict. Let's go to the Eye, the front page. Quite a headline. Train drivers to demand bigger 2025 pay deal in new headache for Labour. Labour came in, gave a lot of pay rises to various people, but it doesn't seem to be enough. Susie.
No, the average train driver salary at the moment is £59,000 a year. Mick Whelan, who's the head of the main union, says that, we're still clawing back money that we didn't have in previous years, that we should have had rises that we didn't have under previous governments. And so the cost of living and everything else, we actually do still need to have a bigger increase than that which was recommended. The problem they're going to hit, the logistical problem, is going to be if the independent pay review body, which everyone has always said they're going to have to stick to, recommends X, then X is all the government's going to pay. And so, therefore, you have a situation where the train drivers might go out and strike again, which is going to look bad and it's going to cause problems, sometimes perhaps for Labour's internal systems, because it's the unions getting upset. But, as we were saying before we came in, at some point, and I'm not wishing people out of their jobs, but at some point we're going to have a train system, a general transport system, which is automated, and there are no drivers left. That is inevitably where, that is, if you pardon the pun, the direction of travel. That is where we're going to end up. And if you get to a point where people who are being paid comparatively well compared to the rest of the country are out on strike asking for more pay, they're only going to paint themselves into a corner where they just speed up that process. And I don't know, well, I don't want people out of work, but I mean...
Yeah. Forgive me, before coming to you, I just want to bring up the front page of the Daily Express, because it's just sort of pressure for money. And the headline there, don't you dare target triple lock again, a message to both Keir Starmer and Kemi Badenoch.
Yeah, I think that this has all been started, this question about the triple lock has been started, I think, by the appointment of Torsten Bell to government, who is a champion of quite radical changes to the tax system, one of which is questioning the triple lock. And to be fair, the numbers are pretty stark, actually, on the burden that pensions are placing on the exchequer in this country. And I know that people like to say, well, I've paid into the system my whole life, but that is not how pensions work. And realistically, it's something that the country can't afford, certainly not under its current levels of growth. Whether or not this is actually going to happen, I don't know. I don't think Labour has said anything about it happening. Torsten Bell's talked about it in the past whilst he was working in the sort of the policy world. But Kemi Badenoch has started talking about it now as something that we've got to sort of nip in the bud, maybe get rid of. Not sure how politically expedient that is to do, especially when you're in such a popular position as she is, doing really well. But, as I say, general sense of malaise, economic doom, this is one of the things that is a major drag around the public purse. Something will have to be done about it at some point. But, of course, pensioners vote, and pensioners don't want to be poorer.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah, something does have to be done. It's not sustainable, but it's not been sustainable since the triple lock was introduced. I can remember when David Cameron introduced it, me sitting there, I think probably on one of these programmes going, well, this is insane. You can't do that. And they've done it and they've stuck with it. And they've made themselves a hostage to fortune.
Let's end on a slightly lighter note. I think it's a lighter note. It's in the Daily Star. Headline, Make Hollywood Great Again. And this is Sylvester Stallone getting a job presumably he didn't ask for. Not sure how you make Hollywood great again.
Stallone. It's Mel Gibson and John Voight as well, who have a combined age of 4,706.
Yeah, it's quite a youthful picture of Sylvester Stallone there, in fairness.
Pre the plastic surgery. Who have been, Trump announced on his social network that he's made them all Hollywood envoys. They will be his eyes and ears, he says, and tell him what needs doing, which makes me think of McCarthyism. But Mel Gibson didn't even know about this. And he said, well, I'm as surprised as you, everybody else, but it's all right. I heed the call. Mad Max is on the job, and he says that, he will... nevertheless, he will heed the call and he will stand up and do his duty as a citizen to give any insight he's got.
Benedict, I know you're dying to have an opinion on this.
I suppose, I mean, as amusing as this is that none of them knew, the most painful thing must be now James Woods sitting there going, where's my job? I've been tweeting pro-Trump stuff for a very long time.
It's also what Mel Gibson's insights are going to be.
Yes.
I think, don't get...
He has some rather choice views on certain people, doesn't he? Yeah.
Susie, Benedict, we're going to have to leave it there. We'll talk again in the next hour. For the moment, thank you. Now let's take a quick look at the weather. It will turn colder this weekend, especially for England and East Wales, but there'll still be a lot of dry weather. Expect a cloudy start tomorrow with pockets of drizzle in the south, but the far north looks clearer. It'll be chilly there and across England and Wales. Northern Scotland will have plenty of morning sunshine, while other northern and western parts will see bright spells. Coming up next on Sky News at 11, the Qatari Prime Minister warns the Gaza ceasefire deal is the last chance for peace.
Weeknights on Sky News.
This is your chance. Tell people. Welcome to the Politics Hub.
Our police force has apologised. If you want to find out about Grimsby, you come to the docks.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Are you not concerned that that could lead to all-out war?
Hello there, good evening. There are fears of an upsurge in violence. What's at stake here?
You are watching the press preview, a first look at the front pages as they arrive.
I'm James Matthews, and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C. Donald Trump, it would appear, is about to learn his fate. There's no doubting the strength of this hurricane as it roars through. Sky News, get the full story first. Do you fear a fourth indictment?
He's from Sky News. He's from Sky News. He's entitled to ask me questions.